Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Vessel and Voice podcast. I'm your host, Kim Charlson. And in today's episode, we're covering a topic that is a little difficult for most people to think about and deal with. So understand, in today's episode, we're talking all about what happens when you die. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode because it's a topic that Monty really likes to talk about quite often. And it's something that he wants us to really understand. It's something that we've talked a lot about in my sessions with Monty that I do, of that the reason why we often make mistakes in our lives of living in alignment is because we're afraid of death. And part of that is the inbuilt fear that we can't get away from, that our brains, the way that they are designed, the way that we can work with them is that we have an inbuilt fear of death. And that keeps us from actually dying for a large part of like making dumb mistakes, things like that. But as many psychologists have talked about, and lots of research has shown, that fear of death really impacts lots of decisions where we would not even have a chance of dying. And that impacts all of the different decisions that we're making in life of having that flight, fight, or freeze response or fawn response, even though it's an instance where death is not actually going to happen. And so it impacts our ability to make decisions in alignment because we have that inbuilt, but that the more that we can understand death, the more that we understand what happens after we die, the more comfortable we can feel with it. And so we can much more consciously make decisions about it. And for me, one of the things that I've noticed more recently in doing channeling work, and it came up over the last couple of weeks, that I saw a clip on TikTok of a movie that I believe features Michelle Williams. And in it, it's a hospice nurse who's explaining the physical process of dying and goes into the different details and different stages of dying. And I just thought to myself, I am excited that I may get to experience that in this lifetime, which is a really weird thought to have. And I realized that in my own self, my fear of death, my understanding of death, by doing this channeling work, by working much more with spirit beings and helping people through these really difficult moments in their lives, has helped me understand that death is something that happens in the body, but not something that happens with my energy or my consciousness or my soul. And it has allowed me to understand that this is something that I'm going to experience. And I really hope that I get to experience it in a way that is as gentle as possible and that is as, as calm as it can be, but that it's something that doesn't need to factor into my decisions, because most of my decisions that I'm making in an everyday life are not going to contribute to when or not that happens. And it made me definitely tear up a little bit of like, wow, this has really changed for me of doing this work. I'm really understanding my energy and my soul, and working with people doing channeling has really allowed me to change my opinions on it, versus before I was super scared of it. It was something, I didn't want to think about, deal with. It was something far down the road. So let's get into it with Monty, and I will see you at the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us on this episode where we will be discussing something that humanity really needs to understand further, because one of the most motivating factors for different choices that you make in your life is the fear of what happens when you die. Now, it is to be said that there is a certain aspect of being in human form that you cannot escape the fear of death within your system of how your body is made. It is something that is very difficult to not allow to impact you because of your physiology. However, the more that you can come to terms to accept that you will inevitably die, and that you will no longer exist within this particular incarnation, in this particular physical form, but that your soul will continue, will allow you to feel less fearful about death. This topic is something that we believe that everyone should understand, so that way they can make choices that are more in alignment with their soul, as when you make choices out of the fear of death, whether consciously or subconsciously, it very often takes you out of alignment with your unique expressions that you want to make in this particular incarnation. Now, as we covered in the previous episode, there is the all that is, the universe, and then you exist in physical or in non-physical, regardless of whether you are in physical manifestation or merely in spirit form, as something that is separate from the whole. And it is important to understand that being in physical manifestation is something that you have actively chosen to do because you wished to experience the challenges energetically of being in physical manifestation. It is not a punishment. It is not something that you have chosen to do because it was specifically to punish yourself, but rather that you chose it because you wanted to master your own energy and to learn how to transmute energy in a more difficult situation. Energy, as we have said, moves much slower in physical manifestation, and so therefore requires you to maintain much more of a conscious focus. We will not speak about the physical experience of death, but rather what happens energetically after you have left the physical plane. Once your soul has disconnected from your physical form and is returned fully into spiritual form, your soul goes through a period of decompression where it is merely allowed to rest. As we have said, being in physical form is very difficult, and so your spirit team, beloved ancestors, everyone else that is a contributing member of your soul journey, bring you back into spirit, where you then are allowed to rest, that they shower you with the abundance of rest energies or other energies that you need to be able to feel at ease. During this time period, you get to choose whether or not you want to rest. And so there are some souls that decline this or do not understand that it is available to them. However, for most individuals, they go into, we will say, the arms of their support team, where they then get to rest and recuperate for a period of time. After this period of time is over, your soul is able to engage a bit more with the energy in the spirit realm and to make choices once again. Now, after this rest period, it is important to understand that your soul is typically offered 3 different choices. It is offered these choices by itself. There is no higher power or team of individual spirit beings that is saying, this is your assignment, do you choose to accept it? But rather, your soul asks itself what it wishes to do to continue forward. The choices are to either go back into physical manifestation, to stay in separation but in spirit, or to reunite with the whole that all that is. Very few souls choose to go back to the all that is because they enjoy the experience of living in separation and allowing themselves to express different energies. Once your soul has made that decision, then the process begins of transitioning into that choice. So it may be that you have chosen to be in physical manifestation again, and so it is prepared by all of the coordinating things that need to happen. And so you come into physical manifestation again. Your soul makes certain elections, certain choices about which energies it would like to prioritize working on in your reincarnation, which energies it would like to express, and if there are specific occurrences it wishes to experience, as we will talk about in a future episode. Now, even though your soul has chosen certain aspects, it does not choose every aspect of its incarnation. There is a certain amount that is left up to what we will call and term divine will of where it is in this particular time. Now, as we have talked about on Soul Timelines episode before, it may be that your soul goes back in time or further in the future. It is the conditions that are specific to the soul and what it wishes to experience and its soul growth in that moment is what determines where the soul will go next when it comes to physical manifestation. It is important to understand as well that this is not only in human reincarnation that we are speaking of, but all of reincarnation, whether it is in format of being a human or an animal or a plant. It does not matter. It does not matter whether it is on Earth or some other part of the universe, in some other dimension. It is important to understand that physical manifestation is very varied in its ability to present different options and different choices of different energies and formats of energy. They are infinite, we would like to point out. So your soul may incarnate in different places. Now, we wish to very quickly and briefly speak about starseeds. It is important to understand that every soul has experienced an incarnation outside of being on Earth. Every single soul has done this. It is important to understand that it does not make you different from anyone else. However, it may be that your soul has determined specific preferences about expressing energy from the overarching culture from a previous physical manifestation, because you can carry those choices forward. However, that is your choice of your expression and does not make you better than anyone else. It merely means that you are expressing a specific energetic format of a specific desire of what is more advantageous than another. Now, when it comes to deciding to be in non-physical form, when you make that choice versus being reincarnated into a physical manifestation, then you are able to work with energy in a very different way. As we have said, physical manifestation is extremely limited in the amount of energy that it can move quickly. And it takes time for things to come into physical manifestation because the energy moves much more slowly. If your soul decides that it wants to accelerate its growth or to be able to have a bit of an easier time working with energy, it decides to stay in non-physical form. Now, it is important to understand that just as in physical format, where you can make different choices about how you are expressing your energy, the same can be said in non-physical formats as well. And that may be that you decide to change your non-physical appearance, which is purely the expression of energy. It may be that you decide to take on different tasks in non-physical formats, just as you would in physical formats. The choices are very similar. However, the format of the choice is what is different, because the energy is the same on the energetic continuum, but how as it is expressed is different. The format is different. Now, that is when, as well, you can make the election to allow yourself to stay in spirit for a longer period of time, such as what we have done, choosing to stay in spirit for a long period of time to work on Kimberly's team. Now, what is important to understand is that when you are in non-physical, you do not experience death in the same way as you do in physical, because what it is that your physical format, your physical incarnation is limited in the amount of energy it can consume, the amount of energy it can maintain over time. And it's important to understand that in the non-physical format, you do not experience death in the same way. And so it is the realm of what we would term the deathless. However, again, your soul is changing its expression of energies and the formats of energies that it wishes to manifest in non-physical through different means. We use manifest in this word only because it helps you to understand it a bit better. And so it will change over time, but the essentialness of your soul will stay the same, of that it contains all of the various different energies, but merely different ones are emphasized or expressed. And so therefore, it may be that your soul flows two different ways of expression over time. If your soul instead decides to reunite with all that is, it will cease to exist in separation. And at that point, you cease to exist in the way that you would understand. Your consciousness is reabsorbed into all that is, and so the only way that you are expressed as part of the divine whole is through divine will. We hope that this educates you a bit more about what happens when you die. when you transition out of your physical vessel into purely spirit energy. It is important to understand as well that within the spirit realm, there are different cultures, different segments of energy where different souls gather. So you are also given the choice of where you wish to reside when you are no longer in physical format in the interim between when you wish to go back into physical form as well. So that may be those different experiences that some individuals express. Now, when you come back into physical format, your energy is what is important rather than the specific memories of what occurred in previous lifetimes. This is something that we wish to talk about in a future episode with past life regressions. But what is important is not so much the events as they occurred in terms of A, B, and C happened in this order, but rather the energies that you took in to your soul, that you consumed, as well as the energies that you began to create within your soul. And so these are the things that you can carry forward from lifetime to lifetime. That is the impact of different events that you may have experienced or different lives you may have experienced within physical form that then you carry forward. It is purely the energetic carrying forward that most individuals desire, and their souls decide to carry that energy. Now, it is important to understand that there are certain souls that do retain a certain amount of memory about past lives. And it is because they are deciding to help verify the existence of things beyond the physical manifestation, that their soul is still connected to that and that they are choosing to express that energy. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We look forward to discussing in the next episode more about this topic. That is all. It's interesting to see the process that Monty has laid out as one of choice. And that's something that he really wants us to understand often in what he shares, is that it's always an act of choice, that there is divine will. And maybe we'll have in a future episode of choice versus divine will and how those work together. But it's very often that he wants us to understand that we always have a choice of the actions that we're taking and decisions about broad things that happen to us. And yeah, there are events that we can't control, such as when someone has a violent death, that's not usually something that they have chosen or determined. And Monty's been very clear on that before in individual sessions that we've done. So I just want to make sure that that's also been said, but that the process of transitioning back into spirit is something that's very natural for our souls to do. And we're not alone in that, that we have that support team from our spirit guides, from our beloved ancestors, from all of the different spirit beings that are there as part of our journey. And I think that's important for us to understand, is that if we do believe in something after death and we believe in reincarnation, that we've had multiple lives, it's important to understand that we're not walking this alone, that while we leave behind the relationships that we have in physical manifestation and that experience of that, we have these other relationships that are on a very, very long timeline across many different incarnations of these other energies that help us. And one of the things I think that has helped me feel a little bit more comfortable, of course, I'm still uncomfortable about it, but a little bit more comfortable, is knowing that my spirit team is there. They've been there, they will continue to be there, and they're going to be there for me when I make that transition. So if you have any more questions about these topics, please send them to us at hello@kimcharlson.com. If you hadn't had a chance yet to listen to the previous episode, I would definitely recommend that you do, because the next episode next week is about specific events that happen and the energy that we kind of take in as part of that and how it impacts our soul journeys. Monty has really been laying the foundation in a series of 3 different episodes for us to really understand a little bit more about how our souls work on a longer, more broad perspective. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, please do. And as always, we will see you in the next one.